In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up your brand new Golf Simulator Enclosure. As a first step, all of the poles that you receive in your kit are color coded. What you want to do first is grab the poles that have the same color code on them. This one has green, so I'll grab all the green ones together and I'll make a neat pile of them. These colors represent the depth, width, and vertical parts of the frame. First, grab a yellow width pole that's the longer size, and then grab a second yellow width pole, which is the shorter size. So you should have this as a combination to start off your base with. So as a first step, we'll lay these on the ground so that you're able to sort of picture out what this is going to look like once it's put together. You're going to need a 3-way corner. You're also going to need a 90-degree elbow, and then you're going to need this. All right, for this next part, you want to take your 90-degree elbow and slot it into the width pole, and then take the small joiner pole and put that into the elbow joint right there. So then take your 3-way corner and make sure that you have a slot for the vertical pole is sitting on the outside of this pole. And simply just slot that in. Now that we've got half the base down, we're going to move on to the front side of your enclosure. So grab yourself 2 of these 2-way corners that you're going to attach to both of your depth poles. All right, time to move on to the rear vertical poles. So what you're going to need for this are the poles that are labeled with the color green. You're going to need one longer green pole, and then you're going to also need the one shorter. One has a spigot in it, and the other connects into that pole. It's time to move on to the front vertical poles. So you're going to need the color red for these, and you're going to need one pole that's longer with the spigot that's red, and then one that's shorter without a spigot that will then connect to the longer pole. So we're going to attach these to the front 2-way corners. That's when you start to see your enclosure really start to take shape. All right, it's time to build out the top of your Golf Simulator enclosure. You're following basically the same steps. So for the next part, you're gonna need your width pole, which is the yellow color. And you're gonna need one that has a spigot that's a little bit longer and one that's shorter. You're also gonna need a 3-way corner on each side. If you don't have someone that can help you with this, I recommend using the shorter pole first and connecting that to your 3-way corner, and then moving on to your longer width pole. And that will allow you to get a little bit of balance, and then if you don't have someone and you just have yourself standing on a ladder, you're not putting yourself at any risk of the frame actually falling over. So we're going to start off on the left hand side, and we're going to repeat the same steps on the right. Once you've got your shorter yellow width pole connected to either the left or right hand side, really doesn't make any difference, but we've got it connected to our left, your right on the screen. For this next step, you're going to need your depth poles. These are coated with the color blue, so grab them. There should be 2 of them, and you'll install these to your rear vertical and front vertical poles. This will add some stability to your structure, allowing you to keep working on the rest of it. All right, our enclosure's starting to take shape. We've got the 2 depth poles on each side. That's given us a little bit of stability for us to continue to do our work. And the final step is to put our width poles in. Now we've got half of that done. As I mentioned to you before, we're going to get the second pole put in on the back side of the enclosure, and then we're going to work on the front side and get the width pole set up. So we're making some progress. We have one more step left to secure our enclosure, to make sure that we have the right stability. When you're hitting balls into it, it's really important that this will hold up over the long haul. Now we're going to use a tension strap to add that extra stability to our structure. So I'm going to show you how to do that now. All right, our frame is finally set up. It's nice and stable. It's time to get the fabric dressing around our enclosure. For this next part, if you do have someone to help you, it's going to really speed up your process. But if you don't, you can do this bit by yourself. You will need your ladder still to get this done. So the first thing we're going to start off with is the canopy. Now the canopy runs across the top and along the sides of your enclosure. So we're going to grab that. So you'll actually see that this is labeled canopy. Grab this piece, and this is going to go across the top of your enclosure. All right, so I've got the canopy over the top of our enclosure, and it's now draping down the sides. Looking for a uniform gap between the bottom and each side. So you want to get roughly about that 80 mil from each side. Make sure you've got that right amount of clearance, and then move on to the other side and repeat the same process. An important thing to note is that the canopy doesn't need to get to the end. There has to be a gap, and it's not meant to cover the entire frame. Something else you want to check for before moving on, once you throw your canopy over, or even before you do that, make sure that there is a Velcro strip that sits about 15 to 20 centimeters off the back of this canopy. Now you can see it running along here, and that you want to kind of line up with where your tension cable is. If this piece of Velcro is on the front side or is closer to your front vertical poles, then you've got the canopy the wrong way. So flip it around, make sure that they're at the rear. All right, so what you're going to need now is some of these cable ties that we've supplied for you. You'll see that they're quite strong, quite sturdy, and what we're going to do, we're going to attach the corner of this canopy to our structure, and we're going to do that very lightly. We're not going to tighten this or fasten it all the way, because we may need to still adjust it to get it absolutely correct. You don't tighten them all the way, and around to each of these corners attach the canopy, and then we'll move on to the next step. What to do is just loop it underneath the pole, and then we're going to simply just make sure that we can obviously reach that, and we'll just close the loop on that. Again, we do not want to fasten it all the way. We just want to kind of just get it attached for the moment. What I'm doing now is I'm actually going to reinforce this corner by putting a second zip tie, and I'm going to attach it to the vertical pole at the front here. Gone and fastened the canopy and its corners to all the different poles within the structure of our enclosure. What we now need to do is go along, and for every second hole there is, we're going to use a cable tie and attach it to the rest of the structure. Now you don't have to do this for every single hole that you find on the canopy. What we will do is generally just go around and use every second hole. It's more than adequate. So once the canopy's on, what I've done now is I've actually turned the enclosure, and now I've got the back of the enclosure right here, just to have access to the back of it so that you guys can see what I'm doing. When you're setting it up, and let's say you've got a wall behind your enclosure, then it might be a good idea to actually flip it around so that you have access to the rear baffles and poles so that you can attach the 2 screens that come along with this. The first screen we're going to attach is at the back of our enclosure, is the backing screen. And again, follow the same process. We're going to tie up the 2 corners on each side. We're going to leave it enough give so that we can adjust the screen if we need to, and then go around, tighten it, and then I'm going to go and do every second hole and actually tie that to the rest of the frame. Before hanging up your backing screen, make sure that you check for where the Velcro strips are. You want those Velcro strips on the outside, because we do have some baffles that are going to wrap around the poles and then attach onto the backing screen. So alright, so as you can see, I've got 1 cable tie looped through that attaches to the rear width pole, and then another cable tie that loops through and then attaches to the rear vertical pole. And this just gives it a little bit more stability and rigidity. Try to implement this across all of your corners. Alright, I've now got my corners in place. What I'm going to do now is actually add a cable tie to every single hole up the top, just to give it a little bit more support. Most of the weight is obviously bearing down, and it's quite a heavy piece of fabric, so I want to reinforce the top. This side screen is not meant to cover the poles. If you're trying to stretch it to the point where it covers the pole, don't do that. You'll probably end up ruining the fabric and also put too much tension on the actual poles. Alright, let's move on to the impact screen. Now when you have your impact screen laid out on the floor, just to get an orientation of which way it's going to go, grab your impact screen and then look for where the Velcro strips are. For this time around, we're going to need the Velcro strips to actually be facing us, or the inside of the enclosure. Make sure that it's not the other way around, because we do need the fabric baffles to wrap around the poles that attach from this impact screen to the other parts of the fabric of the enclosure. It'll make more sense as you go, and we're going to start on the corners and basically use the same steps and the principles that we've used to hang the rest of the fabric and secure this impact screen onto the enclosure frame. Once your screen's attached to the front depth poles on each side, so make sure that you've only got a cable tie running to the depth pole. Do not attach your screen to the actual width pole that runs along the back of your impact screen. Now, the first thing you want to check for, you want to make sure that you have enough clearance from the backing screen and the actual impact screen. And the reason is we have some baffles that need to be installed a little bit later on, and the Velcro strips can only be so far apart until the actual fabric doesn't fit. A little bit of a tip with getting this right, we installed this tension cable a little earlier. And so what you want to do is take your impact screen and line it up to where your tension cable runs down. Let me show you a little bit closer. All right, so taking a little closer look, so we've got the backing screen, got a bit of clearance between the backing screen and the actual impact screen, and then we've got the tension cable here. So we want to line up your impact screen to the tension cable, and that gives you a chance to then get the rest of the fittings correct. Once you've lined that up, you can go ahead and then tie down the bottom left and right corners of the impact screen, and then we're going to actually go and attach a few more cable ties just like that onto the tension cable, and that'll just give it a little bit more stability. You want to make sure when you're doing this step is not to add too much tension to the actual impact screen. The reason being, you will get a ball that will ricochet back to you because of the amount of tension that's running through the impact screen. Secure it just enough to keep it stable, and that's it. Loop it through and get that nice and secure. All right, the next step is to install the baffles that attach from your screen onto these side panels, and there are Velcro provisions that should be lined up on each side just to make that a little easier. Velcro strips down the side. We're gonna match that up to the screen and then the side panel and do the same on both sides. All right, now we're going to take our rear screen baffle. This is basically going to run from the top of the canopy and attach onto the top of your screen. So grab that. We're going to start at one corner, work our way through. All right, only a couple more steps left. We're going to grab the pair of front pole baffle coverings and we're going to attach them to the left and right hand sides. The next step is to attach the front with baffles, finish off the front. The next step is to add the vertical baffle coverings for the rear of your enclosure. So we're going to grab the pair of baffle coverings and we're going to work our way down. Again, pretty elementary now. Take the Velcro strips, match them up, get a nice neat finish and can move on to the next side. So repeat the same step on both sides, the left and right of the rear of your enclosure. All right, the final step is we're going to take the last piece of fabric, which has 200mm pieces of Velcro on either side. So you're going to want the piece that looks like this. This is what's going to catch any stray balls that go underneath your impact screen. So the way this works is one side of your Velcro will attach to the back of this backing screen, and then it'll actually slip underneath your rear width pole, and then it's going to come up and attach to the bottom part of your impact screen where there is a Velcro provision on the back side of that. Pull this fabric through to the other side. You'll see the backing of the impact screen has that little Velcro provision, and then you'll be able to then just simply stick that on, and then we're going to pull this backing screen down and it'll simply attach to this slip piece of fabric here.